Late Friday night, Chappaquiddick Island, Martha's Vineyard. Senator Ted Kennedy and Mary Jo Kopechne are heading to the ferry, the last one of the day. They take a wrong turn. Instead of heading to the ferry, they're now on a dirt road. In the distance is Dike Bridge, a small crossing with no guardrails over Pond. The car hits the bridge at an angle and flips over as it sinks into the water below. Only one of the passengers will survive this night, but the circumstances surrounding what actually happened still remain a mystery. Earlier that day, Senator Kennedy had joined his close friends, Joseph Gargan and Paul Markham, in the annual Edgartown Regatta, an event they had competed in many times before, but not the previous year. Edward Kennedy was the youngest of 4 brothers to their father, Joseph Kennedy Sr. Joe Jr. had been his father's favorite and had been groomed to be president before his death in World War II. John F. Kennedy took up the mantle and became the 35th President of the United States before his untimely assassination in 1963. Following this, Robert Kennedy prepared for his run to the Oval Office, but was also assassinated just the year before. Edward was the last remaining son, and the onus of carrying on the family legacy fell to him. Robert F. Kennedy had been assassinated around this time in 1968. To mark the occasion, they had planned a party on Chappaquiddick Island with the 6 boiler room girls who had worked for Robert Kennedy. This group was named for the windowless room they worked in, all known for being intelligent, efficient, and bright. They had served the older Kennedy brother in his political aspirations. In all, 6 men and 6 women would attend the cookout that night at a rented house on the island. Theory 1. The official story. The party had been carrying on for some hours when at 11:15 p.m., Mary Jo wanted to return to her hotel in Martha's Vineyard. She'd have to leave soon, as the last ferry for the day would depart at midnight. Kennedy offered to give her a ride, and the two departed from the rented house in his 1967 Oldsmobile 88. This was already strange, as Kennedy's driver, Crimmins, was present. Why drive himself? Neither Kennedy or Kopechne told anyone of their departure, and even stranger, Mary Jo left her purse and hotel keys at the party. A short way from the cabin, the road would split at a T intersection. The left, paved road would take them to the ferry. The right led to Pond and was a dirt road. Kennedy later claimed to have been confused and unfamiliar with the roads, but his past 30 years of experience here, and even the 2 trips he had made earlier in the day, contradict this. In any case, he turned towards Pond and Dike's Bridge. Shortly later, they reached the bridge, and the car speared off moments after he slammed on the brakes. There were no guardrails at the time to prevent the car's departure. Kennedy claimed he was doing 20 miles per hour and was sober, but that would have given him sufficient time to slow the car. A computer analysis conducted in 1980 used the skid marks left by the car, estimated his road speed at 30 to 38 miles per hour. The Oldsmobile overturned in the water and sank with its hood touching the ground.
Was the senator inebriated? He claimed that there was no heavy drinking at the party, and he himself hadn't had a drink for hours, but his chauffeur Crimmins had stocked the house with a considerable amount of alcohol earlier that day, and Mary Jo's blood alcohol level was well above the limit.
Kennedy later said he doesn't remember how he escaped the car, but that he dived back down numerous times in attempts to free Mary Jo before ultimately giving up due to exhaustion. He then walked the 20 minutes back to the party house, passing numerous houses with their lights turned on and even a fire station, never once attempting to ask for help. Once he reached the house, he collapsed into the backseat of another car. Gargan and Markham joined him soon later. Once he explained to them what happened, the 3 returned to the scene of the accident, still not having raised the alarm. The 2 friends dove into the water, trying to find a way in to free Mary Jo, not knowing if she was dead or alive. Gargan sustained an injury to his arm, but upon the inquest, the other people of the house stated both men were dry when they returned that night, and Gargan had sustained no injury. Had they even tried to rescue her? Rather than returning to the house, Kennedy chose to go back to Edgartown, where his hotel was. Since there were no more ferries running that night, he dove into the water and made the 500-foot swim back. Why his two friends would allow him to do such a thing after what had just happened remains a mystery. In Kennedy's official statement, he said he almost drowned a second time that night as the current pulled him out and away from Martha's Vineyard. In 1980, Reader's Digest commissioned an analysis into the tides that night. In direct contradiction, the findings showed that the current would have actually pushed him inland instead.
A trend for the overly dramatic additions to the truth to garner sympathy seemed to be forming within the senator's contradictory story.
When he reached the shore, instead of notifying the authorities as he had promised to do, he returned to his hotel. At approximately 2 a.m., he met an employee of the hotel, asking him what time it was and telling him he had a problem sleeping due to the loud neighbors. His clothing was completely dry. Was he trying to establish an alibi, claiming to have been at the hotel the entire evening?
The next morning, hotel guests reported him appearing normal, as if nothing had happened. The incident still hadn't been reported, but was soon to be discovered.
Gargan and Markham met Kennedy in Edgartown, and the three proceeded back to Chappaquiddick Island. There they learned that the car had been found. He would finally report the incident 10 hours after it occurred, enough time to sober up if he had in fact been inebriated. Kennedy then wrote a statement, omitting key information which would allow the guests of the party to leave the island without being interrogated. Furthermore, Mary Jo's body was not autopsied, as no foul play was suspected. Cause of death was drowning, but in fact was more likely to have been suffocation. Her body was found grabbing the seats with her head arched upwards into the upside-down car's footwell, where a pocket of air would have formed. She might have managed to survive for quite some time in the car, even 3 to 4 hours. Her blood alcohol was found to be 0.09%, a considerable amount. Her parents' greatest regret was following the Kennedy people's advice and not requesting an autopsy. After speaking with the local police and writing a statement, he headed back to the Kennedy family compound in Hyannis Port.
He remained in seclusion from the public, surrounded by a legal team, no doubt, in full damage control mode.
He was next seen 6 days later when he attended the funeral of Mary Jo Kopechne, his neck in a brace as he claimed to have suffered a concussion in the incident. The neck brace was soon to disappear, likely another dramatic addition to his story. He would later plead guilty to leaving the scene of a fatal accident and would receive a suspended 2-month sentence. He then made a public address and apology, explaining what had happened. Though some questions were resolved, many issues remained with his story. Apollo 11 had just landed on the moon, which offered the senator some breathing room as the focus wasn't on him until it was to re-emerge shortly later with an inquest. Senator Kennedy's dream of becoming president like his elder brother was dead with Mary Jo Kopechne.
Good night.
Theory 2. The Sheriff. At 12:45 a.m., the night of the incident, Deputy Sheriff Huck Look was heading home when he saw a dark-colored vehicle stopping on the side of the road. Being a quiet spot and late at night, he stepped out of his vehicle and approached the car to see if the driver was lost or needed help. The car was a mere 20 feet away, but as soon as he made a step or two towards it, the car reversed and then turned onto Dike Road, heading towards the infamous bridge. Deputy Look was just able to make out the first bar of the license plate, which matched Kennedy's. When he was called to the scene of the accident the next morning, he immediately recognized the car and the license plate from the night before. No explanation has been given for the time discrepancy of 11:15 p.m. versus 12:45 a.m. As the theory goes, the senator and Mary Jo, for whatever reason, had stopped on the side of the road.
If they had truly intended to go to the ferry, by the deputy's account, they were already 45 minutes past the last departure.
Perhaps Kennedy was drunk, and fearing what the press would do if they heard an account of him on a dark road with a young girl in his car, instead tried to flee. He was, after all, a married man with a pregnant wife and a history of driving incidents and affairs. He stepped out of the car and instructed Mary Jo to drive it, assumedly back to the house where he would reunite with her. Mary Jo drove a small Volkswagen Beetle and was a foot shorter than Kennedy, not to mention the enormous size of his car. She had had a few drinks already and didn't see the bridge, plunging into the water alone. The senator would have returned to the party and not found Mary Jo, perhaps assuming she had fallen asleep somewhere. If we follow this further, it would also explain why he didn't call the police until the next day, not realizing she was dead.
But then why would he implicate himself in the accidents? Perhaps he was covering up something else we can only guess at.
Theory 3. The Three. One note from the sheriff was overlooked in the previous theory. When he approached the senator's car from behind, he clearly saw the driver and passenger in the front of the car. However, he also noticed seeing a coat or a third person in the back seat. When the car was retrieved from the water, the purse of Rosemary Keogh was found, another one of the boiler room girls who was at the party. As the story goes, Mary Jo hadn't felt well sometime in the evening. Either by herself or with the aid of one of her friends, she laid down in the back seat of Kennedy's Oldsmobile to get some fresh air or sleep off the effects of the drinks. She didn't take her purse or keys, as she wasn't expecting to go anywhere.
How the sheriff saw her in the backseat is debatable, as she would have had to have been sitting up.
When Kennedy and Keogh saw the sheriff approaching, they sped off as the senator didn't need another drunk driving or extramarital affair glazing the cover of newspapers. Losing control further down the road, the car crashed into the water. Kennedy and Keogh managed to extricate themselves from the car with no idea that Mary Jo was in the back seat. They returned to the party, and since nobody was hurt, left the car until the next day. Only in the morning did they learn of their fatal mistake. Theory 4. Boats in the water. This is where the story takes a darker, possibly political turn. As soon as the incident occurred, the FBI was made aware, and in turn advised President Nixon, who had people immediately on site trying to gather dirt on Kennedy, as he expected to run against him in the next elections.
Plant 2 guys on him. This would be very useful.
Along with this are rumors of mafia vendettas against the Kennedy family. They wanted leverage over the family, and they weren't above setting him up. Is it possible that Mary Jo was already dead before the incident on the bridge? What lends credence to this version of events is the Ballou family. At 2 a.m. on the night of the incident, the Ballou family were in a boat nearby the ferry channel when they saw a small craft approaching. It turned off its lights and motor and drifted to another, larger vessel. The 3 men on board reached the larger boat, which also had its lights and motors off. Moments later, the smaller boat left. Kennedy had claimed he swam across to Edgartown. Is it a coincidence 3 people were on this small boat? Kennedy, Gargan, and Markin? Was this boat transporting something or someone else as well? In the end, Teddy Kennedy escaped any serious legal repercussions and continued to serve in the Senate until his death in 2009.
Though the Kennedy curse had spared his life, unlike his brothers John, Robert, and Joe, the Chappaquiddick incident would end up killing any chances he might have once had of running for president, as well as poor Mary Jo Kopechne. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please subscribe if so.